Hare Krishna. So, welcome to the Bhagavad Gita class. We are going to start a new chapter today, chapter 4, which is Jnana Yoga or Transcendental Knowledge. Before we get started, let us recite the Mangalacharan prayers. These are prayers that you must read the translations. These are prayers that are given in the introduction chapter of Bhagavad Gita as it is, the textbook that we are following. And the translation or the essence of these prayers is to request the blessings of the previous acharyas, like very great acharyas like Rupa Goswami and the other Goswamis, and Srila Prabhupada, and also the Lord himself, Lord Sri Krishna, Srimati Radharani, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and all the other devotees, so that we can understand Bhagavad Gita clearly and properly. And this topic that I'm just talking about, that why we ask for their blessings, and that being a ingredient to understanding Bhagavad Gita properly, we will study that in the Bhagavad Gita itself today. You will see that directly. So without further ado, let us recite the Mangalacharan prayers and we will get started. I will start the screen sharing here. Okay. So you can see the screen. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tharine. Now we will recite the prayers on the screen. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupah Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe
Vrindevaswani
Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu
Prabhu
Nityananda
Nityananda
Shri Advaita
Advaita
Gadadhara
Gadadhara
Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna
Krishna
Hare
Hare
Krishna
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 Hare
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 Ram
Rama
Hare
Hare
Ram
Rama
Ram
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 Ram Hare Hare.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so we will get started with chapter 4. So as usual, I will sort of share, I'm sharing the whiteboard, and we usually proceed in the format of a classroom or a, oops, what happened here? Okay. So chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita. And in chapter 4, the title of chapter 4 is Jnana Yoga. What's going on? Jnana Yoga. Okay, that is the title of chapter 4. Jnana means, now we have covered Jnana in chapter 2. And specifically, we covered the topic of Atma Jnana, which is the science of the soul. Now, before we proceed forward, just a couple of quick requests to everybody that joined. If possible, turn on your video. I like to kind of, see you. Just gives me a better feeling that somebody is listening. And find a nice, quiet place. Even if you cannot turn on the video, please, pay very careful attention, listen, spend these 2 hours absorbed in the Bhagavad Gita, and keep the Bhagavad Gita with you and follow along as we are going. So that is my request. So, Lord, and keep yourself muted. And another thing was, yeah, if you have questions, please post them in the chat or raise your hands so that we can know that, I can know that there are questions and I can allocate appropriate amount of time to answering them. Okay, so Lord Krishna had covered Atma Gyan. That is what is traditionally or a sort of a vast amount of Vedic understanding is about this Atma Gyan. The whole of Katha Upanishad, what is known as the Kathopanishad, is basically this Atma Gyana. When Nachiketa asks Yamaraj about the science of the soul, about the Gyan of the soul, Yamaraj gives him this knowledge. And Kathopanishad is considered one of the very, very, very prominent Upanishads. However, in chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita, so Jnana Yoga, before we go to chapter, the sort of the essence, in chapter 4, Lord Krishna is saying that this process of knowledge itself can lead to spiritual progress. When you have, in today's world, having jnana does not produce anything tangible. At best, it makes you a teacher, which you can teach using that knowledge. You can give it to others. You can get some money for that knowledge. And others who will obtain that knowledge will do something useful with it. For example, a mechanical engineer may build some machine. A computer engineer may build some software or some hardware. A doctor may go and actually treat some patients. So we call those things as little more tangible. But in spiritual science, knowledge itself, obtaining knowledge itself can lead to liberation or moksha, or the highest spiritual goal, which is moksha or liberation. So the process of jnana, of spiritual knowledge, is itself very, very useful. So this is different from material jnana. In that sense, people think that material jnana is just knowledge. Unless it is applied, it is not very useful. Now, I must say that the process of obtaining jnana requires application. You have to study carefully. You have to repeatedly go through it. You have to understand. You have to ask questions. So even when you are obtaining jnana, if you go to university, you have to do action. To obtain jnana, you have to study the books. You have to read the, do your homeworks. You have to do the tests. All those things you have to do. So there is action definitely involved in the process of jnana itself. But when one obtains the jnana, that itself leads to spiritual progress. That is the essential meaning of Jnana Yoga. Okay. Now comes the essence part. In the very beginning of chapter 4 itself, from verse numbers, I would say 1 to 15, Lord Krishna is giving what is known as Jnana Mishra Bhakti. So as we have said, so I will just write it in Sanskrit or Hindi as well. Jnana Mishra Bhakti. So Bhagavad Gita, or the highest form of yoga, is Bhakti Yoga. And Jnana Yoga can be dovetailed into Bhakti Yoga. That is called Jnana Mishra Bhakti. That means Bhakti which has been mixed with Jnana Yoga. And what that means is that instead of obtaining Jnana about Atma, you obtain Jnana about Krishna. That is Bhakti towards Krishna, Krishna Bhakti. There is so much to know about Krishna. So Lord Krishna is saying, focus on that rather than trying to understand the science of the soul and Atma Jnana and all that. Just know about me. And he will say that very, very clearly, most clearly in verse number 4.9, which hopefully we will get to today. My goal is to get through perhaps, sort of my most, if I go at a very fast speed, my goal is to cover 1 to 15. Otherwise, if I can cover 1 to 9 or anywhere 10 or 11, somewhere in that range, I'll be happy that I made enough progress today. So the point I'm making is that the best type of jnana is Krishna jnana, jnana about Krishna. And Krishna himself says that in the Bhagavad Gita itself. Instead of focusing our energy on obtaining jnana about Atma or about the what is known, what we studied in the second chapter as Sankhya, the analytical study of spirit and matter and how spirit and matter are different from each other and how spirit is more superior, matter is inferior. Instead of going into all that, which is very head hurting, it gives a headache to understand those things. Simply understand who is Krishna and the details about Krishna, and that kind of jnana is much, much, much superior than the Sankhya Yoga or Atma Jnana. And that kind of jnana is also called Jnana Mishra Bhakti, because you are obtaining jnana about Krishna, which is bhakti to Krishna. Only a person who is interested in Krishna would like to know who is Krishna. So that is bhakti to Krishna. Whoever is interested in Krishna is a Krishna Bhakta. Definition of Krishna Bhakta is what? One who is interested in Krishna, who loves Krishna. That is Krishna Bhakti. So that is the sort of the beginning foundation that I wanted to give you. Then from 16 to 42, which is the rest of the chapter on Jnana Yoga, this focuses on the not essentially on the Sankhya Yoga part, but the process of Jnana Yoga. The process of Jnana Yoga. How you make progress in any kind of Jnana, whether it is Krishna Jnana or Sankhya Jnana or Atma Jnana. The process, how should you follow? So the Jnana itself had been covered in chapter 2, the Atma Jnana. Okay, I hope all this is clear. So now we will dive into the actual verses of chapter 4. So the first 3 verses, 1, 2, 3. Here, Lord Krishna is giving sort of the knowledge about himself. We said Jnana Mishra Bhakti, Krishna Jnana, correct? And Krishna Jnana, to understand who is Krishna, who is Krishna, that Jnana, the best source of it, or one of the best source, is equal to Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita will tell in great detail who is Krishna, especially starting from chapter number 7 all the way to chapter number 12. And this is the essential portion of Bhakti Yoga, to understand who is Krishna and how to approach him. That is Bhakti, understanding who you should love, who should be the person worthy of our maximum love is Krishna, and how to love him. That is explained in 7 to 12. So that will come later. However, first, Lord Krishna is explaining about the Bhagavad Gita itself, the text that contains this knowledge. So, in a sense, from chapter 4, Lord Krishna is now turning the gear into, or going into a higher gear towards bhakti. So far in chapter 2, we discussed about Atma Jnana, then went to depths of Nishkama Karma Yoga, which continued into chapter 3, Nishkama Karma Yoga, and then setting an example, and so on. So that was sort of the theme so far, now Krishna is going into a higher gear, saying that now you should start obtaining, or one should obtain knowledge about me, and that is the higher level. So that is what is going to be covered now. So the best source is Bhagavad Gita, and 1 to 3 will cover the history. Whenever you want to start reading a book to obtain jnana, you want to read, what is this? This is the 5th edition of the book. What was, you will see in a book which says preface to the 5th edition. That's how the book starts. Then they will say, you know, about the book, the preface, the introduction, those kind of things. Similarly, Lord Krishna is giving a history or the origin of Bhagavad Gita. So 1 to 3 is giving that. So to say, basically 1 to 2, and the third verse is very important. We will cover that. So we will talk about verse number 1. Okay. So verse number 1, Lord Krishna starts speaking. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. All of you with me? You have your books? You are opened chapter 4, verse number 1. Very good. Thank you. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Imam vivasvate yogam proktavan aham avyayam viviswan manave praha manur ikshvakave abravit. So Lord Krishna is giving the history of Bhagavad Gita in verse number 1. Imam vivashvate yogam. Vivashvate is referring to Vivishwan. Who is Vivishwan? He is the sun god.
Sun god.
Yes, he is the sun god. His name is Vivishwan. So the sun that you see in the morning or afternoon or evening, same sun, that sun basically is an embodiment or the personification of a person, and his name is Vivishwan. He is the sun god, and he is the starter, the first person in the Sun dynasty. Who is the most important person we know in the Sun dynasty?
Lord Rama.
Lord Rama, yes. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9 or Volume 9 as we call it, the sort of the lineage starting from Vivishwan all the way to Lord Rama, and even later has been given. All the kings and all the important members of this dynasty coming from Vivishwan have been given. And one of the, another, just to kind of remind and juggle your memory, those who have been attending the Bhagavatam classes, a very important member in that dynasty is who?
King Ambarish.
Yes, King Ambarish. Very nice. And we did a whole seminar on King Ambarish several weeks back. So anyway, what Lord Krishna is saying, that Imam Vivasvate Yogam, that to the sun god, I had revealed this yoga at the beginning of the yugas. At the beginning, whenever sun god was born, or little after that, I gave this knowledge to him. Proktavan aham avyayam. Proktavan means I spoke this knowledge, I aham. So Krishna is representing or saying the word aham. I proktavan, this knowledge which is avyayam. So he's calling Bhagavad Gita as avyayam. Avyayam is a very, very important word. It will occur at many places in the Bhagavad Gita, and the meaning of avyayam is eternal. Eternal
Constant.
or never dies. It's eternal, unchangeable. And Lord Krishna is using that word avyayam for Bhagavad Gita, and at many places in the Bhagavad Gita, he will use it for himself as well. That I am eternal, I am unchangeable. I never took birth, I am never going to die. So this word avyayam is very important, and in this particular context, this word avyayam is being used for Bhagavad Gita, which means that Bhagavad Gita is eternal. The knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita, the essence of the knowledge in Bhagavad Gita is eternal, which means we will cover this topic also in detail in the 9th chapter, in the 15th chapter, 13th chapter, etc. The essence of the topic is that Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all Vedas. Please remember this. Bhagavad Gita is equal to essence of all Vedas. And Vedas are the highest text in the Sanatana Dharma. So by reading Bhagavad Gita, you get the essence of all Vedas. And that is Avyayam. So Krishna is very clearly calling the Bhagavad Gita as Avyayam or eternal. And so that is about the Bhagavad Gita. Now, what Krishna is saying, Krishna gave this knowledge to Viviswan. And then Viviswan Manave Praha. He gave it to Manu. Manu is the son of Vivishwan. And Manu gave it to King Ikshvaku, who is the son of Manu. So like that, the first three personalities in the dynasty, Lord Krishna is saying Viviswan, Manu, and Ikshvaku. Viviswan Manave Praha, Manur Ikshvake Abravit. So I gave it to Viviswan, Viviswan gave it to Manu, Manu gave it to Ikshvaku. Why is this chain being shown here? The reason for this chain to be shown...
Disciplic succession.
Yes, thank you. This chain is being shown to show how Bhagavad Gita is supposed to be received. How Bhagavad Gita is supposed to be received is through the process of disciplic succession. Or in Sanskrit, it is called parampara. Through the parampara, which means that a perfect teacher has to give it to a perfect disciple, which means a teacher has to first find a disciple like that. Or a disciple has to find a teacher, both ways. And then the teacher gives it to the disciple. That disciple becomes a teacher and gives it to the next, and gives it to the next, and gives it to the next. Like that, when the knowledge comes through a chain of bona fide disciplic succession. So I want to add the word bona fide or perfect disciplic succession, which means the teacher has to be perfect and the student has to be perfect. Sometimes the student changes the message based on some ulterior motives, some personal agenda. That is not correct. For example, we have other types of knowledge. If you read, I'm used to be a fan of Russian history. And this whole concept of communism was sort of created, of course, by Marx and others, but it was put into practice in the most sort of widespread way by Lenin through the Red Revolution and everything. And his disciple was Stalin. And in Russian history, that's my understanding or my reading of Russian history. Of course, I was not present to see it myself. The way I have read it is that the way Stalin practiced it was not how Lenin desired. He practiced communism in a much more authoritarian, dictatorial, etc., and so many atrocities were committed, and etc. So there could be hidden agendas. And of course, this whole thing is very material, so we don't want to talk about, this is not a class about communism or anything. But the knowledge has to come down, or if it comes down from a perfect teacher to a perfect student, through a perfect teacher to a perfect student like that, the knowledge remains pristine It does not change. It does not get broken.
Doesn't get corrupt.
Doesn't get corrupt. And that is how Bhagavad Gita is supposed to be obtained. So to obtain the right Bhagavad Gita, the right understanding of Bhagavad Gita, we have to find that chain of unbroken disciplic succession, and it has to start from the perfect teacher, and the perfect teacher cannot be anyone other than Krishna or God himself. And therefore the Bhagavad Gita is the one here, right in the verse number 4.2, Krishna is saying, I spoke the Bhagavad Gita. He's establishing the authority of Bhagavad Gita itself. That this Bhagavad Gita was started by me, and I gave it to Vivishwan and so on. And this Bhagavad Gita is coming down like that. And that Bhagavad Gita I am speaking to you today. So I'm just seeing any other important points here. Yeah. Then, so let's read word 4.2. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu sakaleneha mahata yogo nashtah parantapa. So evam parampara praptam. Evam means like this. Parampara praptam. Prapta means to get. Through parampara you get the knowledge. Through this chain of disciplic succession. Imam rajarshayo viduhu. This knowledge, imam rajarshayo viduhu. Vidu is an important word, means it is obtained or it is learned. Vidu means the word Veda comes from vid. Vid means to know. So again, throughout this chapter, you will see the emphasis on knowing or learning the knowledge, because this chapter is telling about Jnana Yoga. Anyhow, another important word is Rajarshayo. Rajarshayo, or I'll just Rajarshayo. Rajarshayo means it is the breakdown of two words, Raja and Rishi. Raja plus Rishi makes Rajarshi. Raja plus Rishi means saintly king, not corrupt kings. So this is saying that the knowledge was especially received by the saintly kings through the disciplic succession. Okay. And this emphasizes the importance of the fact that, I am not showing all this. Sorry. You should have, one of you should have told me. So Rajarshi means saintly kings. So the kings are expected to be saintly or well-versed in this spiritual knowledge. Today's kings or today's leaders have no spiritual knowledge, or many have no spiritual knowledge. Some may have, and they may have corrupted spiritual knowledge. So this is also emphasizing the importance of having this knowledge to be obtained by the leaders of the society, so that they can give it to the people. One of the primary duties of the leaders of society is to disseminate spiritual knowledge to their subjects, to their citizens. There are 5 kinds of gurus that are identified in the Vedas. The parents, the kings. King is supposed to be a guru. So one of the types of guru is king. Then you have the regular guru, a teacher that you go and learn from. Another type of guru is somebody you subject to, a management authority. You say that, okay, so it could be your boss, or he has the right to tell you what to do. So in that sense, he's a guru. So there are various kinds of gurus. My point is the kings or the leaders of the society are also supposed to be gurus, and they are supposed to get the spiritual knowledge and pass it forward. For example, we know some of the great people through the Bhagavatam who are nice gurus. Maharaj Yudhishthir. He became the king after the Mahabharat war, and he was very, very saintly. We read about Parikshit Maharaj. After Yudhishthir went to, left their body, before that, they installed their grandson, Parikshit, Abhimanyu's son, and Abhimanyu is the son of Arjuna. So they installed Parikshit, who was also a very saintly king. And there are so many examples of very saintly kings, Maharaj Ambarish and so many. So anyway, so the kings understood it in that way and disseminated it to the public, or ruled in a saintly way. But sa kaleneha mahata, over time, the knowledge always gets degraded. And this knowledge gets destroyed. This great knowledge gets destroyed over time. So what does Lord do? That we will cover in verse number 4.7, a very famous verse. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutthanam adharmasya tad atmanam srijamyaham. To re-establish dharma. Whenever dharma degrades, I come to this world to re-establish it. So Arjuna is, or Lord Krishna is saying that I had originally given this knowledge to Vivishwan, and now I am giving it again to you. Now, of course, when Krishna had given it to Vivishwan, Vivishwan was not on a battlefield. The situation was different, but the essence of knowledge is the same. So the exact verses of Bhagavad Gita may not have been spoken, but the essence is still the same exact essence was given, because this knowledge is eternal. It does not change. Okay, so let's see what else I have to cover in this. Yeah, okay. Now, I want to show you through the introduction. At the very end of the introduction, this is the introduction chapter of Bhagavad Gita as it is. This is our Vedabase website. You go to vedabase.io or you go to vedabase.com. It still takes you to the same website. Click on Bhagavad Gita and go to introduction. And at the very end of the introduction, the Acharya who has given these commentaries, which we are reading, is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He's number 32. And his guru, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, had given this entire chain of disciplic succession. And this starts all the way from Krishna. So there can be multiple chains of disciplic succession, but they all start from Krishna or Vishnu, same person, just different names and different appearance. But they can all start, they all start from, and each person may have multiple bona fide disciples like this. Okay, so one of the chains is coming through Lord Brahma, and there can be more as well. So Lord Krishna says he gave it to Vivishwan. He's just giving one of the chains.
We don't see the board.
Oh, thank you for telling me. Sorry. So thank you. So it starts from Krishna. Krishna is the starting point, the red circle. And then he could give it to many, many disciples, and the four primary sampradayas. This we had covered, I think, earlier during the orientation. When Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna gave it to four primary persons. These formed the four major sampradayas in the Sanatana Dharma. They are known as the Brahma Sampradaya. He gave it to goddess Lakshmi, which formed the Shri Sampradaya. He gave it to Lord Shiva, which formed the Rudra Sampradaya. And he gave it to the four Kumaras, the four boys, the four Kumara boys. And this became the Kumara Sampradaya. So these are the four primary sampradayas, but Lord Krishna gave it to many others. And Srila Prabhupada, through some chain like this, it could be, any kind of many, many things. Then like this, number 32 in this chain is Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Okay, that is number 32 in this entire chain. So this knowledge, that this Bhagavad Gita edition that we are reading, is coming through this particular chain. Now, every author on the translations and commentaries, whoever is trying to explain Bhagavad Gita, must be able to say which chain he is coming through. If they cannot say that, then you have to question whether I should learn Bhagavad Gita from that person or not. Because somewhere or the other, there was a break in the chain of disciplic succession. And that is why every guru in this whole chain, everywhere, has to only give this knowledge to a perfect disciple. You can give the knowledge, but you cannot make them a teacher. Like in a university, many students come and learn, and some may learn wrong things, some may learn right things. Sometimes teacher teaches 50 students, hardly 2 students really understand. Others just copy the handouts and answers and just submit and somehow pass. Okay, so it's not that only perfect students should learn, but to become a professor of the university, you have to be perfect. You cannot be inducted as a professor in the university so that you can teach others unless you are a perfect student. Unless the current professor has identified you, yes, you have perfectly learned this knowledge, now you can become the next professor. So every guru must only authorize the perfect disciples to become gurus. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry cannot become a guru. And this principle has been maintained through this chain, and you must be careful where to learn Bhagavad Gita from. You must know that this is coming through a perfect chain. Just like if you go to a university, you learn from a bona fide university. You go to Harvard University, Stanford University, or any other university, Oregon State University. It's a bona fide university. You know you are going to get knowledge from this particular place, which is bona fide. It is authorized by the government. Now, I'm not saying all universities are great or anything, but the point is this, that it has to be authorized. I cannot open a university in my home, put just a sign outside my home saying I have just opened a new university. You will not come and enroll in it. It has to be bona fide. It has to be authorized. So one must be very careful how, where, when one is learning, getting the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita from. It has to be through a bona fide source. So that was the point of this whole discussion of parampara. Okay. So in verse number 3, now we are going to number 3. Sa evayam mayate adya yogah proktah puratanaha bhakto asi me sakha cheti rahasyam hi etaduttamam. So what is Lord Krishna saying? That sa evaya mayate adya, that same knowledge I am telling you today. Why? Because in the previous verse he said sa kale neha mahata yogo nashtah parantapa, that this knowledge was destroyed over time. So I have to come and restart the chain. I have to come to again restart the chain. So whenever the knowledge gets lost, the original person has to come and restart. Okay. So that is why that same knowledge I am telling you today. So in this example that I gave, Lord Krishna gave it to Vivishwan. Then at a later time, Lord Krishna also gives it to Arjuna. Okay. That same knowledge. Now, Arjuna did not have any known disciples. So we don't know where that chain went, but the same Bhagavad Gita has been spoken to Brahmaji as well. And what we are getting through A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami is coming through this chain, what I am going to highlight in the yellow color. But the Bhagavad Gita is the same, whether it was given to Arjuna or whether it is given to Brahmaji. Okay. So that same knowledge, Lord Krishna is saying, I am giving it to you today. And there are 2 reasons. This is telling about the criteria of a disciple. Remember, I told you perfect teacher to perfect disciple. What is the criteria of perfect disciple. That criteria of the perfect disciple, Lord Krishna is revealing in verse number 4.3, in the second half of the verse, what we call as C and D. Every verse in Bhagavad Gita can be divided into A, B, C, D, 4 parts, 4 quarters. So in the second half means the last 2 quarters, C and D, which is Bhakto asi me sakha cheti, rahasyam hi etad uttamam. This uttam rahasya. So first of all, this Bhagavad Gita is equal to Uttama Rahasya. Uttama Rahasya means a very supreme, or you can say topmost. Rahasya means mystery. It's a mystery. Why is it Uttama Rahasya? It is Uttam Rahasya because even though many people may hear it, only the perfect disciple can truly understand it. Like in a class, in a teacher, every teacher knows I have a class of 30 students. 3 students or 2 or whoever are really understanding, remaining are just, coming there to give attendance. And, they will somehow pass. The teachers also know that, so they reduce the passing criteria 40%. And 40% also you get by, just copying this, that. Somehow you pass. Teachers are also kind, they pass you. But the real knowledge is obtained only by very few. That is why it is a rahasya. The same knowledge the teacher spoke to all the 30 students. Teacher did not hide. Teacher did not give any special knowledge to the 3 students. The teacher spoke the same thing to all. But there is certain criteria of the student as well, which we will see just now. And if the student does not have that criteria, he will not get it. So the remaining 27 are wondering, I also heard the teacher, these 3 also heard the teacher, why didn't I get it? Why did they get it? They are wondering. That's why it is a rahasya for them. It's not a rahasya for those 3 students. It's the rahasya or mystery for the others, even though it has been disseminated openly. Are you following? So rahasya does not mean that it has been kept confidential. Rahasya means that the receiver needs to have certain criteria to get it properly. All right. Now coming to the criteria. Criteria, there are 2 criteria, 1 and 2. And those criteria are given in A and B. In the first half. Sorry, not first half, sorry. Second half. C and D. I already wrote it here. Those 2. Yes. Bhakto asi me sakha cheti. Cha means and. Che ati. So the criteria is bhakta and sakha. Bhakta means a devotee and sakha means a friend. So the criteria for obtaining Bhagavad Gita knowledge is not that you have to be a scholar in Sanskrit, or you have to be very, very intelligent, very smart student of, IIT, MIT, Stanford. None of those are criteria. No intelligence, no scholarship, no, grammar, Sanskrit grammar, nothing. The criteria for understanding Bhagavad Gita is to be a bhakta, a devotee of the Lord, which means having full faith in the Lord, having love for the Lord, knowing that whatever the Lord is telling me is the truth. Like a small child, many of you may have children, the older people, I know several children are also attending, but those who have children, you will see when the children are young, they listen to the parents. When they become little older, teenagers and other time, then the listening to the parents little bit reduces. They don't listen as much to the parents. Does the parents' love or the instruction reduce? No, it does not. But smaller children, they consider parents, yes, this is truth. My father is saying, I will do it exactly. I won't question too much. Whereas others may think, oh, maybe he's just old fashioned. He doesn't know what he's saying. This, that. I don't have to listen. Lot of other criteria come into their mind. That is being not a devotee of Krishna. When doubts enter, what if he's telling is wrong? I don't trust him. Maybe this other person is right and he's telling something else, which is contradictory, etc., etc. So criteria of bhakta is having full faith that whatever is being told to me, I will take it. There is nothing wrong. I trust and I love this person. That is a bhakta. And sakha means a friend, taking it in a friendly manner, not in an argumentative, in a challenging manner. Okay, I will accept what you are saying, but I will challenge you. I'm going to look at it through a filter of
Tark.
Of doubt.
Tark.
Yeah, I'm looking for the English word here. Through a
criticism.
Yes, a critical filter. Exactly, a critical filter. So I am going to fit that into my frame, or trying to reconcile it into my understanding. So in that sense, so as a friend and as a bhakta, as a sakha and a bhakta, then one can perfectly understand Bhagavad Gita. So these are the criteria by which one can understand Bhagavad Gita, not by any other criteria. That's why Bhagavad Gita is a supreme mystery, because those who do not have this, they may get some portion of it, but they will not get the essence, the full understanding. They may get some understanding, but the full understanding will be hidden from such people. Please mute yourself. Keep yourself muted, please. Okay. Now we go to the next section of the Bhagavad Gita. So 1 to 2, rather, or 1 to 3 was the history or origin of Bhagavad Gita and criteria of a perfect disciple to receive it, to receive the Bhagavad Gita. That was what was covered in 1 to 3. Now, verse numbers 4 and 5, another very important point, very, very important point. Arjuna's doubt on eternality of Krishna. So let us see what he says. So let us read the 4th verse first, and then I will go and describe. Arjuna uvacha aparam bhavato janma param janma vivasvataha katham etad vijaniyam tvam adyau proktavan iti. So Arjuna is saying, aparam bhavato janma param janma vivasvataha. Apara means inferior, para means superior. So he's saying you are, and in this case, apara and para is referring to like age. You are junior to Vivishwan. Okay. We all know you were born in a jail to Vasudeva and Devaki. And then, Vasudev ji took you to Vrindavan, to Gokul. And later on you killed Kansa. All that is known at this point. And now you have gone to Dwarka and you are Dwarkadhish. You are the king of Dwarka. Now you have come here to help me in the battle. So you were born some time back to Devaki and Vasudeva. But the sun god, Vivishwan, has been there from millions and billions of years. And you are saying that I gave this knowledge to Vivishwan. How does that work? Isn't it? It is like a small child, a baby, telling a professor of a university saying, I gave you the knowledge of mechanical engineering. How is that possible? You are such a small child that that professor is so old. How could you have given the knowledge to him? Okay, so that is the kind of question Arjuna is asking. Katham etad vijaniyam tvam adyo proktavaniti. How should I understand? So Arjuna is asking not in a combative way, not as an argument. Vijaniyan is a very humble word. Please tell me, how shall I understand? Please. So vijaniyam, if you look at the Sanskrit of it, it's a word in which there is humility embedded in it. There is no argument. Hey, how come it is like this? It's not in that mood. How come? Then there is argument. Instead, you say, please, I am unable to understand. Could you please clear my doubt? So you are upfront accepting that I must have a doubt. It's not like you are wrong and the onus is on you. The burden is on you to clear your position. That is argument. The other way to ask is, I am definitely having some doubt. The misunderstanding is mine. All I am asking you is to clarify the misunderstanding. That is called asking in a humble way. And that is how a devotee and a friend asks. So in the very next verse, we can see the meaning of Sakha and Bhakta. This is how a Bhakta asks. Bhakta is not blind faith either. I don't question anything. If you have a doubt, you must ask. So blind faith is not recommended. But ask in a friendly, in a nice way, in a humble way. Tvam ado proktavaniti. That how could you have spoken this when you are younger? So that is the question that Arjuna is asking. And what will Lord Krishna say? Obviously, Lord Krishna will say in the 5th verse, I'm just preempting because you all kind of know this. Lord Krishna will say, I am the Supreme Lord. So I don't have an age. That's kind of thing he will say. So a couple of points I want to point out. Point number 1. Okay, is that many people in this verse, they say that Arjuna is unaware that Krishna is God. That is why he is asking this. That is absolutely incorrect. That argument has been strongly denied or strongly rejected by our acharyas. So Bhagavad Gita has to be understood through the disciplic succession, through the acharyas. Lord Krishna has only spoken 700 verses. So our acharyas, every single one of them, I have read the commentaries. Srila Prabhupada says that in the commentary of 4.5, which is the next verse, Baladev Vidyabhushan and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur say that in the commentary somewhere in 4.4 and 4.5. Arjuna is not asking this because he himself has a doubt. That's not the reason. He is clear that Krishna is Bhagavan, he is eternal, and he could have definitely instructed Vivishwan, the sun god. There is no doubt. He is asking for us who have a doubt on our behalf, so that if any of us have that doubt, he is making sure to ask it so that Krishna responds and everybody knows that yes, Krishna is the Supreme Lord. He did not have a guru. He is the eternal guru. Knowledge originates from Krishna. So that point, Arjuna wants to make sure everyone who reads Bhagavad Gita understands it. And that's the reason he's asking this question. And all these acharyas have written this in the commentary. I know some people who say, oh, look at verse number 4 of 4th chapter. Arjuna did not know that Krishna is Bhagavan. Otherwise, why would he ask such a question? That is utter rubbish. I cannot say it anymore directly. Okay, so that is one point. What was the other point? I forgot. Anyway, so yes, so that is one of the points, that Krishna is eternal. So yeah. And in 4.5, so let us now go to, so I said there are 2 points, but I cannot remember the other point. No problem. So we will go to verse number 4.5. So 4.4 was Arjuna's question or doubt. So to say doubt on our behalf, not for him himself. There are so many instances where before Mahabharata, Arjun knows who saved Draupadi. Who saved Draupadi? Krishna saved Draupadi. Draupadi herself knew she was calling out the name of Krishna, and Krishna gave her unlimited sari. Doesn't Draupadi know that? And if Draupadi knows, doesn't Arjuna know? He is the husband of Draupadi. And Krishna saved Arjuna and everybody else so many times. Before the battle started, both Arjuna and Duryodhan went to Krishna. Arjuna asked for Krishna because he's saying, if you are there, you are the Supreme Lord. Victory will be there. Duryodhan, who was a fool, asked for the army of Krishna. So it is not, it's complete rubbish that Arjun was unaware that Krishna is Bhagwan. So anyway, Lord answers, Krishna's answer. So Krishna's answer is, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Bahuni me vyatitani, Janmani tavata cha Arjuna, Tanyaham Veda Sarvani, Na Tvam Vetha Parantapa. So Lord Krishna says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Bahuni me vyatitani. Many births, Janmani, Vyatitani, Janmani, Tava cha Arjuna, both you and I. Cha means and, so both you, me means I, and Tava means you. Vyatitani means we have Vyatit kiya hai. Vyatit means to pass to live through it. So both of us have gone through many births. Tanya aham Veda Sarvani. Aham Veda, again Veda means knowing. That's why Veda means that which is to be known, the Vedas. So Veda means to know. Aham Veda Sarvani, I remember all of them. I remember all of them. Na Tvam Vetha Parantapa. Again, the word Vetha means to know. But now the word Na is being used. But you don't remember Parantapa. Parantapa is another name of Arjuna. So this is the difference between man and God. The difference between man and God. The Lord is God, is omniscient. I think the spelling is correct, or omniscient, I don't know. Omniscient. Omniscient means all-knowing. Another word people use for that is antaryami. Antaryami means one who knows everything. Man is not omniscient or very limited knowledge. We don't even know what is going on inside our body. What to know about another person's body? So many people have cancer in their body. They just go about nothing. Once it goes to advanced stage and then it is detected and then you know what's going on in your body. So we do not even know what's going on inside our body. Inside our mind also we don't know. We think somebody is a good person, he turns out to be a bad person. We cannot detect. who is good, who is bad, what is good for me, what is bad for me. People commit foolish activities. So people don't even know what's going on in themselves, what to speak about what other people are doing, or what is the reality about others. But Bhagavan knows everything about everyone. So that is the point being made by Krishna, that I have taken many, many births. Now, this is another point which will be clarified. Krishna will talk about his birth. By the way, my birth is different. So it is not, so that way we are also eternal. One can argue our soul is eternal, isn't it? And we are also taking different bodies, but we don't remember our past lives. What to speak of our past lives? We don't even remember everything about this life. You meet somebody from 10 years old, you say, oh, I have never seen you, this, that, and so, oh yes, I now remember something. You forget so many things, you forget in your life. So we don't even remember the details of this life. What to speak of past life? Okay. And we take so many births, we definitely don't remember what happened in past life. Now, a very good question can be asked. Why don't we remember our past life? And there is a very, I'm not going to go into that discussion right now, because then we will not cover enough. We'll not make enough progress. So if you have such a question, you can ask it in the, as a question answer, and I will answer it at that time during the Q&A time. Okay. So in the mainstream, I will not answer, or you can come to Q&A sessions and we can answer that. But it's a very important question. Why don't we remember our past life? Many people argue, oh, if I remembered I was a dog in my previous life, kindly mute. If I remembered that I was a dog in my previous life, I would go towards God in this life. Then I would know, oh, I will become a dog in the next life, a dog or a cat or whatever, cockroach, whatever. So I will have somebody needs to mute, kindly mute. What's going on? 1 second. Okay. So I made my wife as co-host. I had not done that so far, so she can help with the coordination. Kindly stay on mute, okay? Okay. Where was I? Sorry, what was I saying? I kind of forget my thought. I need to
Remembering earlier birth.
Yes, remembering previous birth, correct. So, yeah, what about that I was saying?
You are saying if someone was a dog, then like that.
Yes. Thank you very much. So many people argue, had I known my previous life, I would lead this current life as a devotee. I would go towards make spiritual progress. But because I don't know my past life, therefore in this life, I am leading a life of materialism, sense gratification. That is not a very good argument. And we can discuss it in the question answer session. Okay. So next verse, 4.6. So in 4.5, Lord Krishna is saying, what did Lord Krishna say? I remember all my past births, but you don't. Which means Lord Krishna is saying, I am omniscient and you are not. And in verse number 6 is a big clarification verse. And 4.6 to 4.9, Lord will provide beautifully, you will see just beautifully how Lord connects two things. One is the nature of his birth. Okay. And how or what is its connection to Jnana Yoga or Jnana Mishra Bhakti. Bhakti, which is mixed with jnana. How? The connection. So first he is going to talk about the nature of his birth. How does God take birth? What is the meaning of God taking birth? So 4.6 is talking about God's birth. So what does it say? Lord Krishna says, verse 4.6, in word 4.6, Lord Krishna is saying, Ajo api san avyayatma bhutanam ishvaro api san prakritim swam adhishthaya sambhavami atma mayaya. So Lord Krishna is saying, although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, I'm reading the translation, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Which means that God's birth is not equal to or not the same as man's birth. Is not the same, not equal to a human or any other living entity. How is any living entity born? From the mother, from the womb of the mother, correct? Through the father's, through mother and father, the mother gives birth to a child. Whether the mother may lay an egg or the mother may give birth to a child directly. Either way, this is how the birth is taken. But the Lord is saying that God never takes birth like we do. He is born sambhavami atma mayaya. First of all, he is born through atma mayaya, by his own energy. Okay, so that's what in the translation also it says that I am unborn and atma mayaya sambhavami, by my internal energy. This internal energy is also known as yoga maya, but through Lord's internal energy, which means the Lord invokes his own energy and takes birth. It is not through the energy of mother and father. We are all born through the energy of mother and father. Of course, there is Lord's energy as well in the mother and father. But if there is no mother and no father, there is no us, there is no child. The Lord did not have mother and father ever. Now you can say Devaki and Vasudev, they were the mother and father. Right? For that, you have to read Bhagavatam carefully. And we discussed this in our Bhagavatam classes during the Janmashtami time frame when Lord Krishna's birth is celebrated. If you read the second chapter of the 10th canto of Bhagavatam, you will see how Lord Krishna is born. Second chapter and then third chapter. Even though Devaki appeared to be pregnant, the Lord was not born from Devaki. When the time came for the Lord to appear, he just appeared in front of Devaki. Her pregnancy just disappeared. And Lord appeared as Lord Vishnu in the four-handed form. Narayana, he appeared. There is a photo also. Let me try and show you if I can find it. Let me see if I can find my PowerPoint. That is how Lord was born. Bhagavatam and appearance of Lord Krishna should be there somewhere. Yeah. Advent of Lord Krishna. Yes. Interesting. I can't find it here. Okay, let me find it online. There's a very nice photo. Yes, right here. This photo is there. Can you see my browser screen? These photos?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this one and this one. So if you see like this is Devaki, Vasudev. This is from Bhagavatam. It's exactly the description from Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the most authentic, authorized version of Lord Krishna's life or his, activities. Lord Vishnu appeared in the four-handed form. And then he converted to baby Krishna. Right in front of their eyes, he became a small baby like Krishna.
Prabhuji, can you share this on the chat?
Share what on the chat?
This picture.
I just Googled for it, Lord Krishna, Devaki, you can do some Google search and you'll see it.
I think you can share the link actually. Yeah.
Okay, I will share it. And here, same picture, Lord
Thank you.
Vishnu
Hare Krishna.
is standing here and then he converts to baby Krishna.
Yeah.
So he
Beautiful.
did not take birth. Everybody else thinks he was born from the pregnancy of Devaki, but that is not true. Okay, so you must understand, once you read, I just gave this Google search, Lord Krishna birth Devaki. You just do this Google search, you will find it. I can send the link later. Okay, let me continue with the class. So this is how the Lord is born. Similarly, recently we did a series on Vaman Dev. Vaman Avatar, we also know Vaman Avatar, Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narsingha, and Vaman. Same thing, Vaman Dev was also the son of Kashyap Muni and Aditi. But he was not born from the pregnancy of Aditi. He just appeared. Lord Narsingha Dev, did he have mother and father? No, he just appeared from the pillar. So the Lord never has a birth like we have. So that is the point of 4.6. That Ajo api san avyayatma. I am Ajo. Ajo means Aja. Aja means unborn. I don't have a birth. And I am eternal. Avyayam. Avyayatma. Remember I told you the word avyayam, eternal. Bhagavad Gita in the 4.1, it was used as avyayam, eternal knowledge. Similarly, now Lord Krishna is saying, Ajo api san avyayatma. I am avyayam. I am avyayatma. I am eternal. Bhutanam ishvaro api san. I am the Bhutanam Ishvara. Bhutanam means all living entities. I am the Ishvara of all the living entities. He's saying that. I am the Bhagavan, Ishvara. Who is Ishvara? Means Bhagavan. So Lord Krishna is saying, I am Ishvara. People ask, where does Lord Krishna says, I am Bhagavan? It is written Bhagavan Uvacha, where does Lord Krishna say, I am Ishvara, I am Bhagavan? Right now, here is saying, Bhutanam Ishvaro api san. Prakritim swam adhisthaya. In my transcendental nature, swam prakritim, in my nature, swam means mine. Adhisthaya, being situated in my own nature, sambhavami atma mayaya. I take birth out of my own energies. Atma mayaya, sambhavami atma mayaya, in my transcendental form, in my swam prakritim, my nature, not the material nature. My nature, which is Ishvara nature. So what else do you need to know? Lord, this 4.6 verse is clearly establishing who is Lord Krishna in a very brief way, that he is unborn, he is eternal, and his birth is, he takes birth in his original form. He is not a human being. Okay, so that is 4.6. Now 4.7. So 4.6 verse is a big clarification to 4.5 that I have taken many births. But Krishna is saying, my birth is not the same as your birth. So please don't get confused. And further in 4.7, Lord Krishna says, why and when he takes birth, with a capital H I will write, he takes birth. Now, that is why Srila Prabhupada never uses the word takes birth. He uses the word he appears. Because somebody who is already present cannot take birth. He just appears and disappears. He's always there, like the sun. The sun is always there. It disappears in the night, reappears in the morning. It doesn't mean the sun dies. So why and when he appears is being clarified in 4.7. So what is this very famous verse? Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutthanam adharmasya tad atmanam srijamyaham. So when he appears, yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. Jab dharma ki glani hoti hai. Glani means when there is decline, when there is complete destruction of religion, dharma. Not Hindu religion, not any religion, of dharma in general. Dharma doesn't mean one particular religion as we know it, this religion, that religion, but when there is a degradation of humanity. So yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata is another name for Arjuna because he is coming from the dynasty of Bharata. So that's why he is called Bharata. So whenever there is a decline or a destruction of religion, of dharma rather, abhyutthanam adharmasya. Abhyutthana means the rise of adharma. So decline of dharma and rise of adharma. Tad atmanam srijamyaham. Srijami aham. Same word as the previous one. Or no, little different. That was sambhavami atma maya, but here tad atmanam srijamyaham. I appear by my own self in my transcendental nature. Okay, so the Lord appears. Why he appears? Or when he appears when there is a decline in dharma and a rise in adharma. Then he comes. And if you read Srimad Bhagavatam chapter 1 of Canto 10, you will see all the kind of adharma that was there. Mother Earth, personified as Bhudevi, as Bhumi Devi, went to Lord Brahma with all her problems, saying, I am in a lot of burden because of all the evil people living on my surface. So earth was burdened by a lot of evil people. And she went to Brahmaji saying, please solve my problem. Then Brahmaji went to Lord Vishnu to say, please come and solve this problem. Then he appeared as Krishna. Okay. So that criteria of yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutthanam adharmasya, that criteria was met. And then Lord Srijam tad atmanam srijamyaham happened. Lord appeared. Okay. Now 4.8. Now Lord gives the three main reasons of his birth, but we won't use the word birth, but appearance. Three main reasons of his appearance. What is the reason of our appearance? Our mother and father's desire. They just wanted us to take birth. That's the only reason why we appear. Or all living entities appear. But the Lord appears for three specific reasons. Any one or more of those reasons. What is the reasons? What are the reasons? 1, 2, and 3. The first reason is paritranaya sadhunam. Paritranaya means to give happiness or to deliver, to liberate. The sadhunam, the devotees. The second reason is vinashaya cha dushkritam, to destroy, vinasha, to destroy the evil persons, evil people, dushkritam, the demons. And the third reason is dharma sansthapanarthaya, to establish dharma. These are the three reasons. Sambhavami yuge yuge. Every yuga I take birth or I appear. Okay. So Lord Krishna is saying these are the three reasons for my appearance. So if you see, think about this. In these three reasons, for reason number 2 and 3, to destroy the evil people and to establish dharma, the Lord personally does not need to come. He can send someone else also, isn't it? Do you think these evil people can only be killed by God? No. Even some other person, a representative of God, like Garud, or any other person can come and easily finish off the evil people. Evil people are very, very powerless in front of God. He can send his friends, his devotees. So many other scenarios can be there where they can finish off the evil people. No problem. Same thing with establishing dharma. He doesn't need to come himself. He can send saintly kings, Raj Rishi, like Ambarish Maharaj, Yudhishthir, Parikshit. They can establish dharma, isn't it? Those who have been coming to Bhagavatam classes, we read about Parikshit Maharaj, how he told Kali, hey, you Kali, don't enter my kingdom. Till I am there, you will not enter my kingdom. Kali was afraid of Parikshit Maharaj. Kali Yuga, the personification of Kali, of Kali Yuga. He was afraid of Parikshit Maharaj. That is the power of devotees. Okay. So you don't need God to come to do these two things. So why does God come? The real reason why God comes is the first reason. To liberate the devotees. Nobody else can be liberated by somebody. The devotees cannot be liberated by someone else. And more importantly, the devotees don't want to be liberated by someone else. Another meaning of paritranaya is to give utmost happiness to the devotees. Is to give happiness. Paritranaya sadhunam. The sadhus want their dear Lord. It's like, like a father or mother who want to see their own child. The child will, if he sends his friend, instead of me, you go and meet my parents. Will the parents feel very happy? No, they want their child. They love so they want to see whom they love, not a friend of somebody whom they love. So the main reason why Lord comes is to give happiness and joy and to take back the devotees, his loving devotees, back with him. Those people, those devotees are not satisfied by somebody else's appearance. To destroy the evil people, to establish dharma, that can be done by other people, other devotees or other representatives of God. But to give happiness to his devotees, only God can need to come. You're following? So this is what our acharyas explained, that even though the reason number 2 and 3 are valid, one is the primary reason. And that is why when God comes, appears, his devotees are very happy. They want to enjoy in all the activities along with the Lord. So anyway, so in verse numbers 4.6 to 4.8, 3 verses, Lord Krishna is giving the reasons and nature of his appearance or birth. The reasons for his appearance, why he appears, and that his appearance is not like the appearance of other living entities, human beings or cats, dogs, whatever, chickens, birds, anything like that. His appearance is completely different. Is that clear? Now comes 4.9. Connection to Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga. So what does 4.9 say? So let me see if, and I didn't check my notes all this while, what all I may have missed. Yeah, I missed a couple of things, but that's okay. Yeah, we can probably cover this in question answer session. I will tell you the questions, the kind of questions that you can ask if you want more information or more knowledge, since this is all about Jnana Yoga. What is the meaning of dharma? So let me just quickly advance the slide here. Some of the, sort of the deep dive topics, which we have not covered so far. What is dharma? We spoke so much about dharma. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Then dharma sansthapanarthaya. So many times we have seen dharma, dharma, dharma. What is dharma? So we can talk about that, deep dive topics. Then what are the incarnations? What is the meaning of incarnations? What are the incarnations of God? So that is another question that can be asked. And yeah, those two things, those two deep dive topics. Okay, so if you want, we can do those deep dive topics in the question answer. So connection to Jnana Yoga. So 4.9 is a very, very important verse. It is the verse which talks about Jnana Mishra Bhakti, like I told you in the beginning. Jnana Mishra Bhakti. Bhakti mixed with Jnana, or Jnana dovetailed into Bhakti. So if you are somebody who likes Jnana, all these teachers and professors and whoever is interested in knowledge, learning, there can be people like that. Typically Brahmanas are like the teachers of society. They like to learn and they like to teach. So dovetailing it, this dovetailing word means instead of learning about mundane things, learning about all material things, all the economists, what do they learn and teach? How to make money. That is what economics, finance is, isn't it? So we learn about all material things. The best way to dovetail Jnana into Krishna bhakti is to obtain gyan about Krishna. That is the best kind of gyan. Deep down somewhere, I also wanted to become a teacher at some point. Then I found like, wow, now I can teach. And instead of teaching, computer science or hardware engineering or software engineering or this or that, I can teach about Krishna engineering. So I like this very much. So teach about Krishna, learn about Krishna. So that is 4.9. So we will see 4.9. What does 4.9 say? Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvataha. Very, very important words. Veti tattvataha. Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti. So Arjuna. So let us decompose or deconstruct this verse. So 4.9, A and B are saying Janma karma cha me divyam. This is about bhakti yoga. The janma and karma of who? Me. Krishna is saying of me. So janma cha karma, you can think. Janma and karma. Cha means janma and karma. Me divya, my. Divya means divine, which are like beyond this world. Again, he is using the fact that his janma and his karma are not belonging to this material world. They are beyond this material world. Evam yo veti. Veti is again the word Veda. Veti is like knowing. One who knows about my janma and karma. So knowing the janma and karma, the appearance and the activities of me, of Krishna. Tattvataha, I will speak on this word tattvataha for 2 minutes little later. Okay, tattvataha. What happens to such a person? What is the result? The result is liberation. How is that defined here? Liberation. Tyaktva deham. Tyaktva means to give up. Deham means body. When you give up the body, what happens? You die, right? When your body is finished, it's called death. Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti. No punarjanma. So if you do janma karma chame divyam veti, you understand? If you obtain the knowledge of my janma and karma, just obtain the knowledge of my janma and karma. That's called jnana, obtaining knowledge. But not about some other topics, not about mechanical engineering, not even about Atma Yoga, but my janma and karma, that is bhakti. So obtaining knowledge about my activities, my birth, my so-and-so, after quitting this body, tyaktva deham, no next birth. Punarjanma naiti. So then where do you go? If not to the next body, what is the result? Mameti. You come to me, my dear Arjuna. So Arjuna. So how more clear Krishna can say? Directly in 4.9, what is Krishna saying? If you obtain knowledge about my janma and my karma, my activities, now it doesn't mean the ordinary karma we do. That karma is not a karma which results in phala. This is God's karma. Okay, karma means activities, what all he is doing, how he interacts with his devotees, how he does this, how he does that, all these things. This is not karma like we know karma. So one who obtains the knowledge about my appearance, my activities, he gets liberated. Is it clear? And not only liberated, he comes to me. Special kind of liberation. We will study in later classes different kinds of liberation. This is special kind of liberation where he comes to me. Mameti. Okay? Clear, everybody? Very clear? 4.9, very important verse. Let me see. So, yeah, so I covered most of all the important points. So, Tattvataha. What is the meaning of Tattvataha? Tattvataha means in essence.
In truth.
In essence, in truth. So you can say, yes, I have read Bhagavad Gita, I know. But that's not what Krishna is saying. You have to know it in essence. You have to believe it in your heart. There has to be that conviction that I believe this. Okay? That is known as Veti Tattvataha. I have read many books. I have read Harry Potter. Do I believe that Harry Potter exists? Superman, Spider-Man, whatever. So if we read about Lord Krishna like that yeah, he's a superhero. Somebody was saying in the beginning of call, it's mythology. This is not mythology. Mythology means myth. Myth means it is, to begin with, it is false. It's a myth. It is somebody's imagination. This is not mythology.
It may
So
or may not be.
that's what mythology means.
Yeah.
So if you know like that, then you are not knowing Veti Tattvataha. And then you are not eligible for Tyaktva Deham Punarjanma Naiti. You don't get that then. Then you will get Punarjanma. So knowing in Tattvataha means truly believing in every word and really internalizing it.
Something like being it. Is it?
Okay, being, but I don't know how you can be the activities of Krishna. But yes, completely living a life of a devotee, of a very, very loving devotee of Lord.
Atmasat maybe. Atmasat maybe is a better word. I don't know.
Okay. So believing it, having full faith in the Lord's activities and all the activities and his birth and appearance and everything, that makes one eligible for liberation. And that happens. How does that happen? That happens through repeated hearing and chanting. What is known as Shravana and Kirtana. Constantly hearing, our conviction develops, our belief deepens. And the Lord, it's not like just hearing and chanting the same thing. It's not repetitive. Lord has given us tremendous amount of variety. There is a lot of variety to keep us happily engaged. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 18,000 verses. In Srimad Bhagavatam. We have been doing Bhagavatam classes for a very long time. We have still only scraped the surface. There is a long way to go. It has 12 volumes, 300 chapters, 18,000 verses. If you read seriously, it may take you at least 5 to 8 years to read it once. Then you can read it again. So there is no dearth. And then there are so many other wonderful scriptures, so many other wonderful where Lord's activities are described. Okay. So like that, you can gain knowledge. You can do Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvataha. That part you can do like this. Okay. Okay, so we will see. Let us see what questions are there. It's 8:15. We have 15 minutes. Okay. So first question is, what is the meaning of the term Supreme Personality of Godhead? Why does Srila Prabhupada use this term? Let me cut paste the question. It has been sent to everyone, but I'll still put it here. Why the term Supreme Personality of Godhead? So there are three things being conveyed here. One is Supreme, Personality, and Godhead. Three terms. So instead of just saying the word God, that's the alternative. Let's just say the simplest alternative could have been, why don't you call Krishna as God? Bhagwan. Bhagwan is conveying these three aspects of Bhagwan. First, that he is supreme. There is nobody above him. Such is Bhagwan. He is at the topmost of the hierarchy. That is Bhagwan. Second thing is that he is a person, which means he is not a beam of light. For example, some people say, God is just a beam of light or a ball of energy. I have heard all kinds of things, or anything else. He's not any of these things. He's a person. And because he is a person, he can interact with you. He can exchange love with us. How can a ball of energy exchange love? Huh? Now you can make it all up. Yeah, a ball of energy, I can love this. Doesn't make sense. Then it's just wordplay. And this whole bhakti and everything is about love. Love towards God. So how can you have love towards a beam of light? Cannot. Not for that reason. I mean, love exists and God is a person. Okay. And Godhead. Godhead is just saying that he is God. Personality of Godhead. Okay, so that is the answer. We can go very deep. We can have a whole seminar on Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just those words. But I'm just giving a brief answer here. Okay, next question.
Prabhuji, 1 minute.
Yes.
Now, can we say that Godhead means head of all demigods?
Yeah, we can say that also.
Yeah. Thank
Not
you.
only head of demigods, head of all living entities, even
Yes. Exactly.
head of our own
Head
self.
Head of everything.
Head of everything, yes.
Godhead is also used for an admired person.
Yes, all
Yeah,
of those
yeah.
meanings apply.
Yes.
Okay,
That's true. Thank you.
next question. Nothing moves without the Lord's wishes. Patta bhi nahi hilta hai. Then I wonder, why do many people have bad mentality, do cruel acts? Why does he not give sadbuddhi? Sadbuddhi, just for those who may not understand, to give sort of good consciousness. Okay, or a good mind.
Wisdom.
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 Yeah, yeah. You can have a lot of words. So why does he not give good wisdom to everyone? Some people say it's role playing assigned by God. Role playing as if it is some kind of a game.
Leela.
Well, Leela, but if you have or somebody has lost their child or loved one, it's not much Leela for them.
Oh.
A lot of suffering for them. So why does it happen? Okay. So it's not a trivial matter. It's a very grave matter.
Yes.
So what is the meaning behind this? Yes, it is true that nothing moves without Lord's wishes. This is absolute truth. Kindly mute yourself. Somebody need to mute. Second. Okay, looks like everybody is muted. So nothing moves. So nothing happens without Lord's wishes. So there are some evil people. So let's say this is an evil person. Let's say he's a killer or some kind of, a bad person. So why does not Lord give good mentality to this person? Good, or let's say wisdom, so that he does not commit bad activities. So this is not related directly to today's class, but this is related to previous classes, and very, very good question. So the answer is that God gives free will to everyone. He gives free will to everyone to act freely, whichever way they want. And this person has two choices: to misuse the free will or to properly use the free will. Okay, so listen to my answer fully before anybody reacts. What question you are asking, or the one who asked this question, is why does why does he not give this choice only? Why does he give the second choice, misuse of free will? Then it would not be a choice. It would not be free will. Okay. Plus, it's not that the Lord just gives free will and leaves you. He also accompanies you all the time. Who is this person on the side? Paramatma. He accompanies us and he is trying to give us wisdom. We don't listen. He is giving the wisdom, but he's not forcing the wisdom. Otherwise, it won't be free will. It won't be a free choice if he forces you to do anything. But he is giving the wisdom. To listen or not is our free will. So everybody has some free will, and out of their free will, some people choose to act, choose to misuse. Many people properly use the free will or don't misuse as much. But some people misuse a lot. Now there is another point. The Lord does not give unlimited free will. This is not there. Free will is limited. Limited based on our past credits. So in the previous life, the people who can do more evil, either in previous life or this life, sometime in the past, they need to have earned the credits. This is the law of karma. Okay. I'll give you a small example. Let's say there is a very good boy. And, I'm just giving an example, very small example. And he is very good boy. First, he used to get $50 pocket money. But because he was very nice boy, the father started giving him $100 pocket money every month. Then he started giving him $200 pocket money every month. Okay. So he acquired those credits. Now he can do whatever he wants with this $200. Now the father expects him to do good things with the $200. Okay. Maybe, buy some chocolates or whatever, do nice things, go, buy a toy or something. But if he goes, buys a gun with those $200 and goes and kills the people, then he's misusing the $200. But if he only got $50, you cannot buy a gun for $50, even if you want. So you may want to have the free will. So to do something really bad, you need to have equal amount of credits to do something very, very bad. So which means that the people who have the capacity to carry out more evil actions, you may desire. That is what the question was asked. Without the wish of the Lord, nothing happens. So capacity to carry out evil actions is determined by the pious credits you have acquired. So let's say you have done very pious activities in the past. Then when you desire to misuse them, and you really, really want to misuse, and you completely don't listen to Paramatma, and you disregard and everything, then God says, okay, fine, go ahead. That is free will. In the Puranas, it is given, Ravana was a very pious person. And that's why he was able to carry out very evil deeds. Same thing with Hiranyakashipu, two of the most famous rascals, most famous terrorists, most famous bad guys in the Puranic history, Ravan and Hiranyakashipu. Okay, so I hope I have answered this question. That yes, Lord ultimately has to sanction, but he does everything to first guide. So many people guided Ravana. Of course, Paramatma guided him from within, but Lord ensures that from outside also so many people guide. His own wife, Mandodari, guided Ravana. Don't do this. Hiranyakashipu's own son, Prahlad, was trying to guide him. But was he listening? Everyone guided Ravana. His own brothers, Vibhishan, of course. Even Kumbhakarna said. Even Marichi, when Ravana told Marichi, you go become a deer and try to, take Lord Ram away from Sita, then I will kidnap her. Marichi said, are you crazy? Why do you want to do this? You will be finished. Ravana told him, if you don't do it, I am going to kill you. Then he said, fine, I will do it. Better to get killed by Lord Ram than to get killed by you. So everybody tried to advise him, but he did not listen. And ultimately, yes, if you have the enough credits, God will have to reluctantly permit you to carry out actions if you are hell-bent on misusing your free will. But you need to have that much capacity. Okay, next question.
Prabhuji, you answered this after I had typed in the question.
So this question has been answered?
Yes, sir. I asked this and then you answered in detail.
Oh, okay. Let me read it anyway. Now I am curious. One who knows the transcendental nature attains the eternal. What does know mean here? Is it to know, understand? Okay, so this is that whole tattvataha concept. How to know in essence, not just superficial knowing. Okay, I have read the Bhagavatam once. I read all the verses. Do you believe in it? Okay, that is the meaning. Like a lot of other people, I have come across people, they have read Bhagavad Gita. Do they believe in it? Do they live their life by it? No, they have read Bhagavad Gita as like somebody else's textbook. If you go to any big college or university like Harvard, Stanford, they will have a course on Bhagavad Gita, or they have a course on theology, comparative religions, this, that. All these courses exist. They teach about Bhagavad Gita, but it is the way they teach is, they say in Bhagavad Gita like this. It's in third person they talk. It's like it's their belief, and I'm just telling you what they believe in. I don't believe in it. I'm just a conveyor. That is not called knowing. They know it because they are correctly able to convey what we are saying in Bhagavad Gita. They also can convey it, which means they know it. Given a written test, they can pass it. They can reproduce the answers, but they have not internalized the answers. Are you following? So that is the understanding. Okay, so those were the questions that were there on the chat, and it is on dot 8:30. So we will stop here. We will continue from 4.10 next week. Next week, yes, there is nothing there next week. No holiday, no nothing. We will continue our classes pretty much unbroken now till we keep going. Okay, thank you very much. And we will have question answer session tomorrow. Please come and ask more questions, and I'll be happy to discuss.
Thanks.
And please engage in the study of Bhagavad Gita. And we will see you again soon next week. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.